in another lifetime, I was in the custom woodworking business. We did custom woodworking and antique refinishing, and which I enjoyed a lot. Had heritage, had a great grandfather who was a chair maker, and enjoyed that a lot. But at the time, it was tough to make a living at it. And so on the side, I was actually doing automotive on the side, along with furniture. And as time went on and we sat down and put pencil to it, we were doing better on the side than we were in the woodworking. Plus the insurance company wouldn't insure us with two different types of business in the same building. And so we finally got to a point where we chose to close down the woodworking portion of it and went full-time in the automotive end of it.
How long have I been wheeling at Sand Hollow? Longer than I can remember. So I can flip back to pictures that I wouldn't even remember, I would say. So my whole life, I mean, we've had the Jeeps. Milt Miles is, you know, almost as old as I am, but like my dad had mentioned, Western was really formed first. So even as a family, I'm sure we went out to Sand Hollow and cruised through the sands. I've been there wheeling at Sand Hollow long enough, from four-wheelers to vehicles, so well before I could drive. But I actually, my first probably rock crawling was in the days of Slip Lock and Milt's Mile. I remember I remember all the time I would get to ride in the front, and we'd hit the beginning of the trail. Dad would jump out, and I got to drive the Jeep forward, so he'd spot me through it, and I was leading a whole pack. So similar to today, you know, it's always Bryce up front leading, but the only difference was then he would spot me. Now, you know, I quite often have to do it alone, you know, which is fun, and that's what I enjoy doing. But yeah, back then I remember being young and driving a manual, 8 years old, could reach the pedals, could drive good, and outdrive a lot of people, I would say, considering most of the people that, you know, this experience comes, but I feel like younger kids get a little opportunity to make it a little easier and better, and I had that opportunity, so my whole life.
So wheeling, I remember as a little kid, probably at least 30 years ago, on the sand dunes, and then in the rock crawling side, I don't believe I got involved till probably 97, 98, something there.
We started going to Sand Hollow back in the mid-60s with the folks in Volkswagen bus down to Arrowheads. And but me personally, wheeling in Sand Hollow probably since 1972 in my first dune buggy, and then serious wheeling after we got the Jeep 40 years ago.
Sand Hollow to me and heritage, you got to go back to, my dad was one of the few and the earliest guys that pushed to keep the mountain open. He fought with the city, he put time and effort in his day to go make sure that that mountain was open and that we had access, and when they went to go put the lake in, that we still had our access because we were told it was an open OHV and it would stay that way. So I've had the luxury of seeing the mountain growing up there in diapers and on, seeing the mountain when nobody was out there and you could go days and not see a soul in sight. I remember blazing the earliest trails that were now fence line road. I remember helping make the roads to give connecting roads to get to trails more efficiently, but also to, you know, keep the mountain, you know, clean but functional, so there just wasn't tracks everywhere, but try to lay out actual there. To this last weekend, I took my 3 little girls out. I got a 4-month-old baby, I got a 4-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter, and we went out, and I have pictures of my other babies in the diapers in the sand and playing in the, you know, it's a sandbox. We get to drive out to this incredible area, and I think without my dad's original presence of keeping the mountain open, we wouldn't have that today. And I want to make sure that I can do everything in my part to make sure that continues to happen. You know, I think that recreation is something we're always going to have, you know, or we should have, you know. And I feel like the business could shift and change, and things have to shift and change at some point. But I feel like if we can keep that mountain open and we can do that, my kids will have somewhere cool to stay. And it's a generational thing. We're going on 3+ generations of trails out there and open, and we have Zion, we have Bryce, we have all those other areas, but Sand Hollow is by far like the closest to home to me of like where I actually grew up, what I actually did, and what I want to see. And I'd love to see all that other stuff stay open, but it's a fight to keep that hidden gem for off-roaders open.
Oh, Sand Hollow. Years ago, that state park and reservoir and everything was officially set up in 2003, I believe. But the beginning of it, starting up before that, was when they were having the meetings and stuff on it. I was invited to sit on the steering committee for the recreation development of Sand Hollow. And during those meetings, they told us that this is going to be an open OHV area. You can go anywhere within this boundary. And so after sitting in those meetings and getting a definition of what does open mean, as far as animal, plant, mineral, what can we drive on? Everything within that boundary was legitimate for running on. And so I started going out every weekend. That's when we started pushing trails out there, when we got the clearance that would be open OHV.
The problem is I really didn't have any involvement, because again, I was so young. You gotta think at 8 years old, in those earlier days, I was riding in the other vehicle, so I got to drive. So I was there, sure, but I would say, but I also had a little older brother, Tyson, that I had to fight for driving too. So there was a little bit of that going on. But Milt's Mile, especially the extended portion of it, I helped with. I actually bent a rear bumper removing a bush that was right in the middle of the go around to Middle Monkey. So, when you go to the Middle Monkey and it splits to 3 options, the far right side, I had to remove a bush right in the middle of that. That wasn't really, it was a bush that would just get radiators and stuff like that. So it wasn't like, oh, we removed this tree out of the middle of the trail. It was, but like I said, we have early days of Sand Hollow where there were shrubs in the bottom of those canyons where those rocks were not even broken. So that's kind of how that went. We did it a long time ago. I would say for me, I've been at Sand Hollow, I was an explorer. So I wasn't so much like, hey, I want to go hit a trail and make a trail. I had more fun going somewhere new, mixing trails, hitting park trails. So my enjoyment was just getting out on the mountain and going different places. So there's a lot of obstacles that I was first on, early on, did, not, oh my gosh, obstacles named after me. No, I was just a person that pushed that boundary a lot. So early days, my whole, since I've had a driver's license, I've lived out there,
Okay, so I was there involved in making slipwalk, obviously, and then Milt's Mile, the Nasty Half. We did the West Rim years and years earlier. It used to be an old motorcycle track, and then we started running it, kind of widened it out, made it into a road, an access trail to get up and down the mountain there. But spent a lot of time just tooling around, hitting things, checking stuff out, checking out new area, just playing, and see what it turns into.
Truth be told, I regret not being out there more. So if I could go back, I would have, especially thinking, I thought about this the other day with one of my other friends, is we did ditch and we did go off-roading, but we ended up in Winchester because parents weren't around. It was easier to go that way. So Short and Sweet, which is a little gem of a trail I have, and it's a trail that I've grown up, growing up in Winchester. We have pictures again of, different vehicles along the way. So I have multiple vehicles out there on that trail. But Sand Hollow itself, I would say not as many absentees. What I did have the opportunity of is, we call the Jeep Barney, it's the 1980 CJ7. I got to take it a lot on weekends, and the big part of that was I always washed it and I always fueled it so that I could always get it again the next weekend. But we went out after school, after games, we went and played. I have a lot of night wheeling in at Sand Hollow, even in my high school days. So I've been out there a lot that way. So early YouTube videos. We had no good map of Sand Hollow. Sand Hollow was a place that if you didn't know someone or you weren't an explorer yourself, you weren't gonna find the trail. You kinda had to go with the group and you had to go with that. So a guy by the name of Bill Christensen, who was a customer but also a friend and still a very active, avid wheeler, he goes by the name of William Waddy, but Waddy's Corral is named after him, but Bill has a lot to do with out there. He's been on part of the upland desert roads and helps with trails. He's taken tons of new people out, but it was more his idea than mine, but it was a mutual benefit for everyone, and it helped Dixie Drive. But we were able to, even the highway going in, we went and videoed some of the earliest maze videos, some of the earliest Milt's Miles, Slip Block, John's Trail. We really should have stayed with it, because it was huge access. But what really unmotivated us is they went in and put a highway right in the middle of the trail that threw off every video that we had done for giving people free access to get out there. But yeah, that was our early days. And then I never did, and if you go back to some of our early YouTube videos, I did post some of that as well, but I didn't focus on it near like we should have, the beneficial it could have been today even now. But we did a good part then, and it did get a lot of the active people, the earlier people that went wheeling. It was definitely the early push of online presence. We were first at Sand Hollow. The thing with mapping at Sand Hollow is us, as in Dixie 4-wheel drive, had the struggle. Everyone knew we were out there. So because we were doing YouTube videos, because we had magazine articles, we had Milt with Milt's Mile, everyone knew who Milt was at that time. We were the go-to people. So when Winter 4x4 Jamboree went from Winter on the Rocks to Winter 4x4 Jamboree, our shop got a million phone calls of who is this event? Is this an event? Is this like Dixie 4-wheel drive just kept always getting the phone calls. And it became really hard because I was one of the only ones up front at the shop. So here I am going between trying to return phone calls to customers, trying to give trail advice and try to make it easier for everyone. It was like, hey, how do we try to give people information without, taking valuable time away from our business that was needed to go to the business, And yes, we want to support the mountain, but at the end of the day, we got to take care of our customers, and our customers matter for the company to stay alive. So we had an individual in our company at the time. His name was Jim, and Jim has been wheeling at Sand Hollow. He's been a friend for years. We were working hard and wanted to figure out the best mapping solution. So we came up with a free map. We were the first ones. We know that people were trying to do stuff. There was GPX files online. There was mapping out there, but it was hard to find. Our shop decided and invested in mapping our own trails, not necessarily our own trails, but running the trails and creating our own free map. And we did do that, and it blew up. Like, that was a bigger thing. That was one of the biggest things in our company that no one really knew from an outside perspective. Like, we gave free mapping to this place. In Moab, you have a book, you got videos, you had all these people that came from out. Sand Hollow had a little bit of forums, a lot of social media because we were early on that. If you go search the hashtags Milt's Mile, the Maze Trail, Slip Block Trail, you'll find that Dixie 4-wheel drive has posted pictures years ago back there. Date stamped, 2010, 11, 12, all those good early years of social media too. So when it comes to signage out at Sand Hollow, I and Dixie 4-wheel drive both thought it was important to keep the mountain open, but also we looked at it as a safety aspect. All too often we were getting pre-Matt's off-road recovery, pre any of that. Our shop again was getting phone calls, hey, I'm broken down, hey, I'm rolled over, and they'd tell me they're on West Rim, and then I'd see a picture of it and they're near the maze. So it was like, man, we need to do something about this mapping. So we, as Dixie 4-wheel drive, invested again in signage, free maps, downloaded it all, put them in, and then teamed up with the Desert Roads to go place them. But it was something we felt it was so important that we spent our own, company's money directly in doing that for the sheer benefit of safety of other people, allowing people to know where they were at. We weren't so worried about, are you on the right trail, as much as you know where you're at, and you know which way to go to get to home, right? Or to get out. And that was something Dixie 4-wheel drive really focused on. And our early map days, the rental companies were giving it to people so they knew where they were at and where they were going. So we were benefiting all these other businesses and the mountain in general. I had so many people that are like, I tried to go wheeling in Sand Hollow 10 years ago and we couldn't find a single trail out there. And so signage was huge for our shop to allow people to get there. And I've always had the motto, if we don't use it, we'll lose it. So I'm kind of a fan of the more people out there properly using it, we'll be able to keep it and have a bigger army to try to keep it open. It is our public land.
Well, the first trail we started out with that I laid out was West Rim, the original West Rim Trail, and then it got expanded years down the road. That was the first one we worked on. And then the mile, I believe, was the second trail. Then we jumped into Slip Lock, I think, was the next one that my kids did a lot on that one. And we also laid out Nasty Half, which is kind of a brutal trail. It was fun, but it was rough. An old one that we used to call Midway that now they call Resurrection, I believe, that we used to run a little bit, were the main trails that we personally were responsible for laying out.
So slip block, we were out, had an old 79 Toyota truck that was all built, but cheaply built back then. And when we were pushing that trail through, I was the only one with a long enough wheelbase at the time to try the waterfall, the horseshoe waterfall, and broke three different front lockers. I was running Lock-Right lunchbox lockers, and the front axle, it would give out each time I was almost to make it over the horseshoe waterfall, so then I'd have to replace it, go back the next weekend, try it again until we finally got it. That's how we ended up naming it slip lock from that locker.
Oh, Milt's Mile was actually named by a good friend of mine by the name of Tom Barque, who lived in Cedar City at the time. Drove a little Suzuki Samurai, and he was with us as we were working on the trail, doing the final layouts and running it. And Tom is the one that coined the name for it. Generally, on most of the trails I've laid out, I generally start by hiking them. I go out and hike the area and look for what's there. Kids all thought I was crazy because I was walk around and look at angles and try to figure what we could get up and what we couldn't. So generally we'll hike most of it before we start driving it. And then as we drive it, we find out what we can get up and what we can't. And so that's generally the rule of thumb when I start laying out a trail. Oh, when it first started out, I started out going by myself originally, and then Tom Barque came out and worked with us when we started wheeling it and going through. The kids, some of my kids would come out and would ride along and usually complain if they had to walk instead of driving. They said, we come out there to wheel, not walk. But, I'm trying to remember. Seems like Mike Cook used to come out quite a bit with us in his J10 and give us an option of different vehicles to kind of see what would fit through where.
What 4x4 vehicles have I owned? Is that in like the last month or in like the last years, you know? As far as years go, I couldn't even count them. I could kind of go back and give you, I've owned a lot of, maybe not kept them for a long time by any means, but I've owned everything from flat fenders to CJ5s to CJ7s to, I've owned a YJ for a minute, I've owned Cherokees. Cherokee was my first one. I've gotten lucky enough, my first new car was a 4-door JK. I got to buy one brand new off the lot, you know, back in the day when those were new. I currently have a company vehicle that's a nicknamed JL1. I mean, that one's a pretty wild build. It was an early day of the JL1. I get to drive the other one called Clifford. It's on 42s and full build. I've had the luxury of owning some cool vehicles myself. I've had the luxury of driving a lot of customers' vehicles, and I say customers, let me rephrase that and say friends. I've wheeled probably 100 different vehicles out of Sand Hollow. You know, seriously, between customers, driving certain ones up there, test driving vehicles, my own vehicles. I mean, I sold 3 vehicles this year, you know, that I bought or whatever. And so that I've had to go through different ones, but I do like to try them all and see them all. And I find that when I get a different one, I find a reason why people love them. I see there is that, you know, oh, I've never been a Ford guy or not been this. No, I've owned that or a Jeepster or whatever. I know the pros and the cons. I currently still have a CJ5, a CJ7, a TJ, and my wife daily drives a JT, let alone the JL, you know, the company vehicles I get to drive as well.
Well, as far as four-wheel drive vehicles, because we've owned a lot of different vehicles, but the four-wheel drive vehicles, I guess one of my early favorites would have been my 42 Willys. It was our first four-wheel drive outfit that I owned. Bought it in pieces. It was in a guy's backyard, and he was using it for a doghouse. And we bought it and built it up, and it transitioned over the years through different things. But that one we had for, well, been in the family for 40 years. And my middle son still has it up in Richfield, still running and still using it. That was probably one of my favorites as far as sentimental. We bought a 1980 CJ7 from a scrapyard auction that we built up for my wife that we still have in the family. It just got repainted a week ago after being rolled over by a former employee. But that one is a really good Jeep, and we enjoyed it. We've done a lot of things to it. I had a 1943 Chevrolet 1.5-ton military truck for a period of time with a boom on it that I had gotten from my father, who had a lot of sentimental value to it, and we used for many years around the yard for picking up stuff and moving. But eventually, we couldn't keep we needed the space, and we sold it off to somebody that was going to try and restore it. But so those were some of my favorites. The current vehicle I drive now is a Jeep Gladiator, which I thoroughly love. It's been a great outfit, and I've really enjoyed it.
So I've actually only personally owned a couple. My old Toyota, that I started with, and that was fun. But then I switched into a built '89 YJ with an LS and 60s and all the good stuff, and then wheeled that for the last 15 years at least, probably.
Yeah, the Rebels, that goes way back. Yeah, the Rebels 4-Wheel Drive Club was just a local group. Some of them were from Cedar, some of them St. George. Had a real combination of different vehicles, Jeeps and trucks and Samurais and just all kinds of 4-wheel drives. And, I can't remember exactly who actually started the club. They asked me to be involved in it, and I eventually was a trip director for the club and would lay out the different trips we'd take and trails. And we had a great time with it, and it ran for several years, and they had the meetings at my shop. But due to certain things and getting busier and that, and for room, we ran out of room and different things, and they needed to find a different place to hold their meetings. And that's kind of when the club kind of folded up. They didn't find another place to meet, different things, and it kind of disbanded and faded away. But it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of good times while we were running together. With a lot of the group that was in that club, that's where we drew the judges for the American Rock Crawl Association. I was asked to get judges for that, and we had 14 judges that we gathered from that group that ran for about 5 years with the American Rock Crawl Association, or better known as ARCA.
I remember the early days. Again, I was a little kid riding my bike around. Not heavy, I would say, in any kind of involvement, but I was around and everyone knew who I was as far as at the club, and I was a little kid. I mean, we all grew up at the shop, the meetings were at the shop. My parents were both at the shop, which meant us kids were at the shop, right? This was our home, and so Rebels 4x4 was the first club I remember. I was far too young to have a vehicle to be involved, and by the time that came around, there was no other clubs. And at that time, there was only Dixie 4-wheel drive and on-track 4x4 later in those years, that is no longer it doesn't have a shop anymore doing on-track 4x4. But when I was in high school, there was Dixie 4-wheel drive and there was on-track 4x4. And for us, a club didn't matter, and as much to our shop. We were busy, we had our own work, we were plowing our own field. It was just trying to get back out with our customers. So Rebels 4x4 was a club, sure, but as Dixie 4 Drive, we didn't want to be like, oh, you can't be part of us. It was just, hey, if you're a customer of ours or a friend of ours, come out with us and let's go wheeling. We sell fun. So Dixie 4 Drive pushed harder at no clubs, but when Winter 4x4 Jamboree came along to help save the mountain with the plan of, hey, if we use this, we can, help fight, keep our trails open, which was then when Upload was formed. Dixie 4-wheel drive supported all that, but Dixie 4-wheel drive couldn't be, and I chose not to, and I felt it was a wise choice of mine. I made sure that none of our owners in our business got involved with the club. It was, hey, we want to help support it, we'll donate, we will allow them to come meet at our shop, we will do everything we can to make sure this club is successful, But that way, if there was something that went wrong with the mountain or something at the event, it was, hey, Dixie's just a supporter of it, it's not Dixie 4-wheel drive event, it's their event. And so we kind of stayed away from that. But the whole purpose when we rebuilt this building was to allow the desert roads and UPLA, and that was our original game plan for our big conference room. And it's been that way for, 5+ years, you know what I mean, of them meeting here and trying to support clubs. But again, just something Dixie 4-wheel drive never fully focused on after the days of the Rebels 4x4 and how that kind of went down.
So that club, we met here at Dixie, just a small group of locals, and we did some wheeling in Sand Hollow. We did a lot out in Rattlesnake, Toker Falls, some trails out by Gunlock that I'm not sure if they still are open or not still. Backcountry stuff, just cruising around, checking out the area, and, making new stuff. Having a good time. So they had board members and a trustee, and people were voted in as president, but we met here at the shop and we were a part of it, but we didn't own the organization or even necessarily started individually. So
as we were developing Sand Hollow and getting more trails and people getting more popular going out there, I got a call from somebody in the state of Utah who requested I do not use their name. They said I could get fired for telling you this, but do you know what's happening at Sand Hollow? And the county was actively working on trading off a bunch of the property in Sand Hollow for commercial development. And we had been promised it would always be open OHV. So I got a hold of a county commissioner that I knew extremely well, whose name I won't divulge at this point. But I got an appointment with him and went in and talked to him. And when I asked them what's going on with Sand Hollow, they played dumb. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, where'd you hear this from? He says, doesn't matter where I heard it, is there any truth to it? And finally, after I told him, I says, we've known each other for way too long for you to start lying to me now. And he finally took me in the other room down at the county building, and they had big tables with maps laid out. They'd been working on this land swap for a year behind closed doors. It should have been done in public hearings according to the law. And so after seeing what they were planning on, we told them that this isn't going to happen. And they said, well, you had no choice. It had to do with desert preserve and trading lands. And they said, no, you can find another way to do it. And I said, we're going to fight you on this all the way. And so after talking to him, I started talking to everybody I knew. Got a hold of a couple of friends of mine, Gil Meacham and Bill Christensen, and we sat down and started meeting together. And from those meetings developed, we put together Utah Public Lands Alliance, which is a nonprofit group for use of public lands. And since then, it's grown considerably. Had great help with Menlo Smith, who was a terrific individual who wheeled and helped out a lot with that. And since then has grown. Currently, the president is Lauren Campbell of UPLA, and he's doing an absolutely fantastic job.
My dad was involved with UPLA definitely from the very get-go when they were trying to get off the ground, and he was on their meetings and committees, and we met with some of the Sand Hollow groups with the BLM and the county years and years ago when they were first organizing some of that stuff. So
I enjoy the fact that I was able to do it, and that now not only my kids but my grandkids have come and get to wheel there. And we've met so many friends through the four-wheel drive end of things in our business from all over the world, actually. And so, yeah, I just enjoyed being able to be involved and to get out and help people and teach sometimes, help people understand better, learn to drive things a little better. It's just been really enjoyable.
Most places you go to trails, you have trail markers because they're BLM roads. They were, in Moab, it was mining roads and mining trails, so there was trails there. Then the BLM stepped up and helped provide, mapping of trails, and then that's actually county roads. Then you got a place like Sand Hollow that is just like one big playground. And if anyone's been around sand, for example, Glamis, you got Automobile Hill. Automobile Hill has been there since the earliest days of Glamis to still now, and it doesn't change a lot. It changes out there, but it blows one way, it blows back. Sand Hollow has a man-made reservoir, and it blew all the sand out, which has given us more rocks, and if you know how sand moves, it shifts, and Sand Hollow is different every single time you go out. So trail signage is important and was important, and we felt it was important. Again, we donated, at the time of the map, we had a QR code, and they're still out on the mountain in certain areas. There's just been some other mapping platforms that have came out that have allowed, I would say, easier access for people to add mapping to it and pictures and all this other stuff. So, you know, they're in the mapping business. So there's a lot of good opportunity out there, but for still the people that just cruise out, there's mappage to kind of give you ideals and directions. And now even Desert Roads or Upload has kind of put some signage up saying, hey, West Rim this direction, and trying to help split it and add it. Here's a trail marker.
Well, Sand Hollow, Bryce and I had the discussion on Sand Hollow several years ago as to whether to, you know, really advertise it and market it, or to try and keep it a secret. And we figured it would be better for everybody to let people know and come and see it and enjoy it. And also it's been a great benefit of keeping the lands open. So in that aspect, it's been terrific. They just finished the off-road games out there recently, which was a great success. Had a ton of people out to it, really enjoyed it. We're getting people from all over the country and from different countries coming out and wheeling on Sand Hollow, and they just absolutely love it. So yeah, I think it's a great thing. Some days it gets really busy. You do have to be mindful and be careful not to run into people, and sometimes you have to wait to let the large groups by, but overall there's room for everybody. There's so many great trails, such a great area to wheel that's different than almost everywhere in the country, because you've got the lake, you can drive to the beach, you can go on the sand dunes, you can rock crawl, and then the amenities around the area are absolutely fantastic. So it's we think it's probably a good thing it's been opened up to the world, and so people can come and enjoy it.